Joining me now, former Queensland Premier Campbell Newman, who will be standing in the upcoming state election, as we know, for the Liberal Democrats in the Senate. Fascinating day watching the UK election, my friend. Nigel Farage, let's have a listen to what he said about where he wants to take his UK Reform Party, and then we'll get your view.
To have done this in such a short space of time says something very fundamental is happening. It's not just disappointment with the Conservative Party. There is a massive gap on the centre-right of British politics, and my job is to fill it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do.
I wonder if he's right. I wonder if it's his personality jumping in 3 weeks ago and getting a lot of media attention is what's about him winning those seats, or if there really is an appetite in the UK among the population to slide to the centre-right. What do you reckon?
Oh, look, I absolutely think there is that appetite, and the numbers are quite interesting because you've got this first-past-the-post system in the UK, Steve, as opposed to preferential voting, which we have here. I don't think the 4 seats that he's won really probably really tells the story properly. So just to get the figures correct, they won 4 seats, but they got 4.1 million votes. So that's compared to the Lib Dems, okay, who won 71 seats with only 3.5 million votes, you see. So they did well in a whole lot of electorates, coming second, as we heard earlier in the program. And so they can take votes away from the Labor Party. And of course, they're taking votes away from the Conservatives. And the reason the Conservatives got voted out is they weren't a Conservative party. I go to the United Kingdom quite a bit I have been over the last 10 years. And my observation is they weren't a very conservative party. They were quite divided. And what Farage is doing is tapping into the same sort of people in Australia that, say, Pauline Hanson has tapped into, but parties like my own, the Libertarian Party, hope to, the disaffected Liberal National Party voters. They're there, they're out there. They're in the middle and outer suburbs, they're in rural and regional areas, and they're people that the elites in the big cities have ignored. And that's there for the taking. So Farage is absolutely dead right, and he is going to do a lot better at coming by-elections, as no doubt will occur.
Imagine if we had first past the post and not preferential voting here.
Well, it makes it very hard, as he's observed, for minor parties. But if you have a charismatic leader, someone who has that name recognition, who's got something to say that people identify with, then suddenly it all comes together. And, you know, there are figures in Australia that if we had first past the post, probably would be quite capable of launching new political movements. But again, I think as long as he is upright, vertical and breathing and committed to that party, I think he'll do a heck of a lot better in coming elections.
Conservatives lost 10 cabinet ministers. They lost a former Conservative Prime Minister in Liz Truss. I mean, they are in one hell of a mess, aren't they?
Well, they lost a lot of the talent, supposedly, on the front bench. Perhaps in this case, it's the clean-out that they needed, and the opportunity now to reflect on what a Conservative Party truly should be about. Because again, they weren't Conservative; they were in the end, despite the initial part of their term with the so-called austerity. They were big spending. They were also high taxing. And I think an issue that was quite extraordinary that I observed firsthand in London was the way in the weeks after October the 7th and what happened in Israel, Sunak allowed, the anti-Israel protesters to take over the streets of London. And like Australia, where a firm statement by the leadership about we're not going to tolerate anti-Semitism, we're not going to tolerate these sorts of terrible scenes and on our streets, they just let it run wild. And I think they were punished for that, for example. So the fact that this leadership group have been hosed out hopefully will give the Conservatives time to rebuild and think again about what really the party's meant to be about.
You wonder, don't you, Campbell, what it might have been like if Boris Johnson had managed to survive as the leader?
Well, gee, we could spend a program on that, couldn't we? Well, look, I think he is one of the greatest disappointments out ever, and I'm afraid at the end of the day, you know, one word for me does it: buffoon. Another one is fraud. I think he was one of the most unfit people to hold the office that I can recall. And it's terrible because he managed to get people's attention. He managed to get those votes in 2019, and then it was totally squandered. And, you know, I mean, I just have no time for people who have the sort of double standards that he showed during the early stages of COVID with what went on in number 10, as we now know. I mean, hypocrisy doesn't sit well with me.
Campbell, back home, how concerned are you if we are going to split in this country into minor parties driven by their faith? I speak, of course, of Senator Fatima Payman. She's decided to quit Labor. She sits as an independent now, but there is this discussion about a Muslim votes party or group of people that may form a party. Would you be concerned if that would have come about?
Yeah, look, I am. I find the whole thing very disturbing, and I'm sure many Australians would feel the same way. Just sectarianism isn't good. It actually sets up division, and you know, I think the thing that the Muslim community need to reflect on is, do they really want to sort of go this way themselves? I mean, if they're concerned about being seen in a negative way by mainstream Australia, well, if they go down this path and that gets ahead of steam, then this is only going to, I'm afraid, you know, right or wrong, it's going to increase that sort of sense of division. People need to vote on issues other than just religious ones. And frankly, you know, I'm a strong supporter of Israel, and the idea that Labor backbenchers, members of Parliament, should be getting it in the neck because they have not adopted an aggressive anti-Israel stance is just preposterous. You know, I think, again, it won't do any good for the Muslim population of our big cities, and it won't do this nation any good. By the way, in the UK election, there was one leading figure, a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Ashworth, who was a key Keir Starmer lieutenant. So he's the shadow postmaster general, and he actually lost his seat in to an independent in a electorate that had a very strong Muslim population, and it's been put down to the Muslim vote that got this guy kicked out. So, you know, those are the sort of things that could happen to the Labor Party in Australia, and I think it's very unhealthy.
Campbell, it was great to catch up on a Friday night. Thank you very much, my friend. I'll talk to you next week.